viewer, welcome to REST Publications. By REST Publications, we mean Real Estate Services and Transaction Publications. This is where we talk about real estate issues, real estate investing, how to create wealth through real estate investment, and how to be able to handle real estate investing in a way that will guarantee return and minimize risk exposures. This is where we talk about understanding real estate services for better performances of real estate investments. REST Publication is a subsidiary of RIS Academy, and RIS Academy is a center for real estate professional development. I'm privileged to be the director of studies of RIS Academy, and of course, a lead advisor of Olale Cambodian Consulting. Because I'm an SS of Uganda. You are welcome on board. In today's episode, we'll be looking at a further step from what we started discussing in our last episode. And our discussion today will center on basis of cash flow projection in viability analysis. In our last episode, we actually opened up discussion of viability analysis in furtherance to what we have done, discussing feasibility analysis in the course of discussing business case for project development. Our focus in REST Publication centers on real estate. And for appraisal purpose, for viability analysis, we'll be concentrating on real estate development, property development. So today, we'll be discussing basis of cash flow projection in viability analysis so that investors will understand how best to be able to do cash flow projection and what is expected in terms of deliverables from service providers rendering real estate appraisal. So after this short break, I'll be right back. Please don't go away. Welcome back. So as I said before we went on break, we'll be looking at a basis of cash flow projection in viability analysis. Before I go into this, let me first of all lay background to the fact that most viability analysis techniques, contemporary techniques that we use today, they are cash flow based techniques. And that's why it's important to understand the basis of the cash flow projection. Actually, viability analysis techniques, among them you have what we call traditional techniques and you have the contemporary techniques. Among traditional techniques, you have the simple payback period, for example. You have the profitability index, you have peak return techniques, you have average return techniques, and so on and so forth. All these techniques, they have limitations because of the fact that they do not readily conform with project reality. They are like casual assessment. When you want to just take a prompt or you just want to be guided, casually, you use all these techniques, particularly talking about payback period. I know where that this is very, very common, where investor will quickly just look at what is the price of the property and determine the payback period by just finding the division of that with the expected net return on the property. So, but that is casual assessment because there are quite a lot of issues around the inflow and outflow of project resources, and hence cash flow based appraisal techniques are more suitable, and that's why they are regarded as contemporary techniques. It then means, therefore, to be able to use cash flow appraisal techniques, cash flow based appraisal techniques, I don't mean one technique, I mean those methods or techniques that are cash flow based. To be able to use any of them or all of them, it's important for us to be able to do our cash flow projection. We should know the basis of projecting so that what we will be doing will be the reality of the project we want to do. Not just by guessing, not guesswork, not by intuitions. Because it's not for academic exercise, it's for decision making, real life decision making. It will involve decision that will require commitment of huge capital. So it has to be done and done well based on reality of the project. Hence, depending on the reality of the project, we should understand the basis of cash flow projection for us to be able to adopt the cash flow based viability techniques. Now, in our cash flow in project delivery, or let me say in appraisal, you have what we call cash outflow and you have the cash inflow. Just like you will say you have the costs and you have the return, or you have the revenue or the income. You have the cost and you have the income. Yes, basically, the cost represents the outflow. Then you equally have the return, which represents, or the inflow, or sorry, the income, which represents the inflow. And talking about the costs and the inflow, one thing that is standard and fundamental is that they have timing. Like you have timing of expending in terms of cost. And you will have timing of expectations in terms of return. You equally have pattern of the spending. In some cases, you may have to spend, the cost might be high. In some cases, it might just be a small amount that you have to expend. So all these, they are important for us to understand, and they constitute our cash flow. So how then do we project our cash outflow? Then how then do we project our cash inflow? So as that we'll be able to work with the reality of the market and the reality of the projects. So in terms of cash outflow, for example, cash outflow requires that you do cash outflow budgeting. You have to do your project budgets. How much do we expect to spend on this project? And the basis of project budget depends on the nature of the project in terms of the investment objective. If it's a project, for example, that is for outright disposal, you just want to build the units and sell off, where it will not involve what we call holding period, then the project cost, your project budget might be limited to the cost of development cost alone. It won't go beyond that. But where it's a project that involves keeping it in your portfolio, that is, it has holding period. Of course, there will be expenses during the period of keeping, during the period of holding it. There will be expenses in terms of maintenance expenses, what we call technically outgoings. So all these expenses have to be taken care of. There might equally be some other implications of statutory charges. They have to be taken care of. Maintenance expenses and all these, they are part of costs that must be captured in the viability analysis. Hence, the need for what we call life cycle costing will be required. Life cycle costing will be required. But where it is development projects, you just develop and don't want to sell out, in that situation, the development costs will be okay. And what constitutes your budget in that? One will be the bill of quantity. The bill of quantity, particularly where the designs are ready. So that bill of quantity will show and have the indication of the cost of construction of the project. It will leave some cost out. Those other costs left out that will not be captured in the bill of quantity must equally be captured. And those are all other associated costs. Professional charges, cost of professional charges, all other associated costs in terms of even cost of fund, in terms of where you have royal father, for example, to settle. It's an associated cost, and your bill of quantity will not capture that. Right? And if you don't capture that, where do you expect such costs to be taken care of from? So it's important to establish, we now need to identify what we call head of cost, all head of costs, including cost of planning approval. Where there is need for demolition, cost of demolition will come in. All this we have to be added together to do the cash outflow budget, even if it's just for the development period. That means we might not really need life cycle costing in that circumstance. So the bill of quantity, then identify all other heads of costs, which will include design, cost of the design. It will include all other professional charges costs, that of cost of project management, for example, project management fee. It will equally include, in case there are associated costs like royal father costs or money charges and what have you, it will be there. Planning approval costs will be there. All this will not be in the actual bill of quantity. Even cost of marketing. Because what we are saying is that before that project will be turned back to cash, such that before it will be turned back to cash, such that it can bring back the money? What are the costs that are required before we can say, yes, this investment has now been converted to money, that we have been able to make our deal out of it? Cost of marketing will be part of the cost. And all these costs that I've mentioned will not be in the bill of quantity. So all these costs have to be aggregated. All these costs have to be made, have to be assembled, so that we have what we call cash outflow budgets. That is our project budgets. So there will be a significant error where we have limited our project budget to just the cost on our bill of quantity. Because the cost on bill of quantity will not cover everything. In fact, in some cases, some preliminaries might not even be in the bill of quantity. It's by site inspections that we'll be able to identify those preliminaries. So, for project budget, so before we can do our project cash flow projection, cash outflow projection now, we first of all do our cash outflow budgeting. That is the project budgeting. Now, when we do the budget, at that position, we'll know what it will take, what it will require for us to actualize the project. How much is the total sum that will be required? The next phase, therefore, let's say, for example, you want to do a project of mass housing, and it will require about 5 billion naira. And it will take a development period of 3 years, or even 2 years. 3 years. Development period of 3 years, 5 billion naira project budgets. Dear viewers, everybody knows that you will not require the 5 billion naira at a go. How and when will such disbursement be required? Don't go away. After this short break, we'll continue from there. Thank you. Welcome back. Before our short break, we have discussed about the project cost budgeting for our projects. And I remember I mentioned vividly that when it's a development project that's meant for capital gain, that you are not keeping in your portfolio, you only need to actually come up with the cost. The budget, your project budget will be limited to the cost of the development costs, covering cost of planning, cost of construction, cost of marketing, and all other associated costs. Let me add, before I go into the projection, that however, where you have to hold the investment. That means the project is for income generation. There will be holding period. So within that holding period, there will be expenses that will be incurred. And that's where the concept of life cycle costing becomes very, very essential in our viability analysis. So we must be able to equally identify based on the reliability analysis of the deliverables of the building, right? What will be maintenance expenses? What expenses do we need to keep to run so as to maintain the asset in a state that will make the asset to be able to perform effectively in the market? Those expenses have to be captured, and very, very important. So life cycle costing analysis will actually help us in doing that. But even without life cycle costing analysis per se, or applying it per se, we must necessarily identify those likely expenses and their timing, so that we'll be able to actually capture them in our analysis. Otherwise, leaving them out will mean that we have mutilated our viability analysis and that do not conform with the reality, the behavior, how the project is expected to perform. Now, we have done our project budget. I gave an example before the short break that you have a project that requires a budget of 5 billion naira, and it's for 3 years development period. The whole 5 billion naira is not what you will need at the beginning, right? So it's important to know how much will be required, so as to be able to know what will be the disbursement schedule. And that is why we need what we call cash outflow projection. Cash outflow projection. With your cash outflow projection, you'll be able to recognize and capture your costs appropriately as at when they will be incurred in your project. Please underline that. It's not it's a mere mental exercise to just treat that 5 billion naira as a lump sum. No, because that's not the behavior of the project. Unless if it's an asset that you just want to acquire, you buy and you move on into the holding period. But if it's for development, the whole 5 billion naira will not be required at a go, right? And of course, that is recognized by the proponents of appraisers. So I mean appraisal techniques. So for practicality, even if we are using development valuation approach, which is residual analysis, for practicality here, it goes beyond applying rules of thumb, say where you consider half interest for full development period, or where you consider full interest for half development period on the lump sum of 5 billion naira as an example that I've given in this case. No, because this is reality, this is practical, it's for decision making. So it requires that 5 billion naira, the project budget that have been done, should be projected. There should be cash outflow projection. Basis of cash outflow projection, therefore, is what we call project schedule or program schedule. It's either a project schedule or a program schedule, depending on whether you are doing a project or you are doing a program. If it's a case of mass housing, as an example, a mass housing will require a program schedule, not just a project schedule. Because a mass housing, to deliver a mass housing, requires multiple projects. It involves more than one project. So where you have combinations of more than one project that are meant towards actualization of one single goal, then that's a program in the language of project management. So that will require a project schedule. Now, but if it is where just you are to develop, for example, 2 units of detached houses in a service estate, that's a project. Right? Then you come up with a project schedule. Even for whether it's a project schedule or a program schedule, the project or program schedule will show us activities and the duration for the activities, the starting time and the ending time, and on that basis, we will be able to do resources allocation. This is very, very important. So a primary need, the primary basis for cash outflow projection is program of work, which can take the form of project schedule or program schedule. Now, out of that, we'll be able to now know for each month, starting from the first month, what are the activities that are there, what are the tasks to be achieved, and what will be the costs. Like that for each month until the end of the development period. And again, this project schedule or program schedule should cover the development period, not construction period alone. So with that, we'll be able to project the total outflow using our project or program schedule. Now, when we now know for each month what will be the requirement in terms of cost, then we can now do what we call resources aggregation. We can now do what we call resources aggregation. I need to mention that, you see, for example, when you are doing, when delivering a project, each month, in a month, you can have multiple tasks, multiple activities to do, different activities. And each of these activities will have their own associated costs in terms of associated resources and down in terms of associated costs. What are the costs to achieve those tasks? Each of them. So let's say in a month you have about 5 activities or 5 tasks to achieve, and each you have now allocated their costs relatively to each and every one of them. With that, you can now aggregate what is within the total cost required for that month, and you do that for each of the respective months over the development period. Now, that will give us what we call resources aggregation. In that situation, we know how much we need for each month. And that how much we need for each month represents what will be cash outflow in that of that project. However, because of contract structure, or even in terms of finance term, because of the need to have a schedule of disbursements, then the already aggregated resources on monthly basis can now be restructured either to conform with contractual terms, or to conform with the finance disbursement for finance. So that will now generate what we call disbursement schedule. So that with that, the finance can be planned, either debt capital or equity capital, can be planned to know how much will the project requires, per time. Might be for every 3 months, might be for every 6 months. It depends. Again, apart from that, in appraisal, one thing is this: with the project schedule or program schedule, you will have the normative, you have the standard resources aggregation and your disbursement schedule. However, that does not mean that might be the end of it. That does not mean that as an analyst you cannot have inputs. Because, for example, if you analyze it, you analyze your aggregation and you look at it and you see the need to do what we call resources leveling, then you have to bring to bear your knowledge about the resources leveling. One of the circumstances that can necessitate the need for resources leveling is for example, where you have a project that is front-loaded. It requires heavy costs, very high proportion of your capital or your budget at the initial stage. This type of structure of aggregation or of the fund requirement can be reviewed. You check it out against the project schedule or program schedule. If there are opportunities to level up, leveling, by the grace of God, will be an issue that we'll be discussing in one of our episodes for us to capture the proper way of handling leveling. But it suffices to mention here that there must be opportunity to level up before you embark on leveling. Conducting leveling is not discretionary. It has to be that it's feasible to do level, so that you can level off the cost requirements, just like you can use it to level up gang required in your project, such that you will not be loading your projects heavily maybe at the beginning. Because my own experience has shown that when a project is heavily loaded at the beginning, right, then there will be an issue. When it's loaded at the beginning, there will be an issue. Particularly, such a project will be more sensitive to variation in cost of fund, variation in rate of cost of fund. Such a project will be very, very sensitive to it. So if we pay attention to the cost requirement structure of our project, and we see that it's heavily loaded at the beginning and there are opportunities to level up, let's level up. You level up so that you make that project by leveling up, you enhance the performance of the project. That means you are creating more wealth. That means the investor will gain more money without mutilating the process. By the grace of God, as I said, we will look forward to discussing aspects of this leveling in one of our forthcoming episodes, particularly in project management and appraisal. Thank you so much. Looking forward to seeing you in our next episode. Bye for now.